Good morning, Nigel. Well, you've had a rather busy 24 hours. Bring our viewers and our listeners up to speed, Nigel. What's happened in the last day?
I've been cancelled. I'm now a non-person. I don't exist. Do you realise I think Ricky Gervais is funny? I know the Djokovic's. I mean, the crimes that I've committed, the list is as long as your arm. Look, I've done two things. Firstly, I've blown the whistle on the British banking industry, which has been going in the wrong direction for years and years and years. Many thousands of people who don't have a platform have been shut down, have been closed out, and that's really awful. But also I've used something called subject access request, which I didn't even know existed 2 months ago. And it's important for us as a channel now to say to people, if you've been closed down by the bank or treated badly, you have as much right as I do to put in subject access requests, and I recommend that you do.
What was your thought, Nigel, when you got this dossier on your desk for the first time and saw yourself talked about in those terms of being disingenuous, homophobic, racist? Just what was the emotion?
I expected the report to say, because I'm a politically exposed person, the costs of compliance are too great, therefore we don't want the account. That was what I expected, Of course, if you're mega rich, it wouldn't matter, but that's what I expected. When I looked at it, I simply couldn't believe the vile, horrible, vitriolic, prejudicial, literally every single one of the worst and often very wrong newspaper articles that's ever been written about me is there. And the way it's been written, he's not yet been convicted of anything. Well, that's nice of them, isn't it? It really was the most poisonous thing I've ever read about myself. I thought to myself, it was rather like being a barrister going into a criminal case. This is the sort of charge sheet you'd have and you'd cross-question the person in the dock. I was really, really shocked by it. It is absolutely horrible. And to have allowed the newspapers access to this and to put it out there, I have to be honest, it does cause a slight sense of disquiet within me, but I've done it because if we don't nip this in the bud, who the hell's going to go into public life in Britain? Because if your family can be subjected to being peps, that really is a price too high for going into politics or senior position in the judiciary or whatever it may be. But I've really done it because I've been aware for some years now that thousands of people are being shut down by the banks, particularly people taking cash, as they want us to drive towards a cashless society. And thank goodness GB News has got its Don't Kill Cash campaign. So I've done it on behalf of all the others. And what's really interesting is the response from members of Parliament, the response from ministers and even the Prime Minister has been as quick as it has. Why? Because they've been written to by their constituents for years. They've seen a banking industry making profits of 35 billion last year, an industry who, through their greed and stupidity, we bailed out, put our taxes up as a direct result of it. And those MPs are conscious of their own constituents being treated terribly.
Are you going to sue Coutts Bank for defamation? Because if I'd written that in my newspaper, or Carol had written her newspaper, or Sam was in her newspaper, we would expect to be sued because it is defamatory. Are you going to sue them?
I don't know yet, Andrew. Right now, my real focus right now is to get this debate out as broadly as possible, to get people to understand that subject access requests exist and please to use them. And I'm going to urge the government and the Treasury Select Committee to act. Don't go to Benidorm for 3 weeks or wherever you might be going. That committee needs to haul Dame Allison in front of it in short order. We need to find out what is going on in a bank that has 19 million customers and is 39% owned by us, the taxpayer, still.
Nigel,
when it comes to options, I'm considering all options, Andrew.
Right.
And there'll be some people who will say, well, it's only Nigel Farage, he's a bit controversial, it's only him. But how many other people and what kinds of people have been in touch with you in the last 24 hours?
I've had one today, a chap who had a Coutts account, closed down 15 months ago with no good reason. He went to the financial ombudsman. He's still waiting for an answer. But he said, Nigel, I didn't know I could request his personal information. I've had another guy younger guy, client of Coutts, trades in cryptocurrencies. Apparently that's not acceptable to Coutts. But I've also had people running small businesses, and they go into their bank once a week, if they've still got a branch, that is, and they put in the takings. And the banks are saying, you know what, we don't want this, we don't need this, go somewhere else. So a lot of little people, I don't mean that in any pejorative sense, a lot of little people, sole traders, men and women, running their own lives, are effectively being shut out of the system. And Bev, it's thousands. It's thousands.
Can I ask you something? What's really surprised me over this has been the response from people who I would say, some of whom are your greatest critics. And the reason they're on side with you over this is because they understand what it means. I think Andrew Neil called it today in the Mail. He called it a new form of McCarthyism.
Yes, he did.
I thought you might want to expand on that. Are you surprised at the support you've had from people who in the past have criticised you on all levels politically?
One of my daughters is very politically aware and has had to suffer being my daughter for many, many years, said to me she'd never seen such support from me online. Yeah, it's come from across the spectrum, and I'm really quite humbled about it. I really am.
Well, Nigel, thank you for joining us. Keep up the good fight. It's a very important fight because they could be watching us for here now.
Completely.
And they could close our backs. Now, we've got to read out this ridiculous statement from Coutts. I'm going to call it ridiculous because it is. But this is what they say. It is not Coutts' policy to close customer accounts solely on the basis of legally held political and personal views.
Yeah.